designer, Steve Guttenberg and Andrew Jones. The reviewer and the designer.
Hello, everybody. You have reached the Occasional Podcast, Season 14, Episode 5, The Reviewer and the Designer. This was a live recording from AXPONA 2026 at the keynote, the occasional keynote, you might call it, with Steve Guttenberg and Andrew Jones at the same time on one stage. It was a lot of fun. So without too much ado, on with the show. Here we go. Andrew Jones, Steve Guttenberg, the designer and the reviewer. Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by VAC, the Valve Amplification Company. Since 1990, VAC has been handcrafting the world's finest amplifiers and preamplifiers exclusively in the United States. Utilizing vacuum tubes, the most linear amplifying devices in existence, VAC provides sonic transcendence. When it comes to musical truth, it has to be VAC. On the web at vac-amps.com. This episode of the Occasional Podcast is brought to you by AudioQuest. All AudioQuest products, from the company's most modest parts to its most ambitious works of art, are thoughtfully designed to deliver outstanding performance and exceptional value, regardless of price. No matter how little or how much you invest, AudioQuest is made for you. Explore AudioQuest's award-winning cables, power products, and accessories at AudioQuest.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This is, believe it or not, the Occasional Podcast live recording at AXPONA. Now, this is very special for a couple of reasons, and one of them is this is the 150th episode of the show, and to help celebrate the 150th episode, I want to have two people that were very instrumental in helping the show over the years. First, the reviewer. You might know his work from CNET, Stereophile, and now YouTube. Steve, the Audiophiliac Guttenberg. Let the people on the live recording know you're here. Everybody, if you could just give us like a big round of applause, say, hey, we're in front of a live audience. Here we go. Let me hear it. That's nice. Very nice. And then the reviewer. You might know his work from KEF, ELAC, Pioneer.
Wait, start over.
He's
the reviewer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say reviewer? Sorry, the designer. My bad. The designer.
He's having a senior moment.
Yeah,
Senior moments belong to the two of us.
Yes, I this side of the table.
150th broadcast. Our combined age is probably 150.
Yeah, I think so. Literally, yeah. Well, no, not quite.
All right. The designer, you might know his work from Pioneer, ELAC, KEF, MoFi, and now Jones and Soretta. Andrew Jones.
Hey, glad to be here.
One of the reasons Steve is on the show is because he is one of the guys that was really inspirational to me very early on. He was one of the first guys that I read when he was at CNET. He was my gateway into the hobby, and I've just always appreciated his writing and his work, and I've really appreciated what he's been able to achieve on YouTube. When the platform switch came, he went from writing to YouTube. I think he really embraced the change, which is not something that we're all known for really very often. And I'm so happy to see your success. Now, for Andrew has been on the show. I always joke about this. I need to give him a 5-timers jacket like an SNL because he's been on the show so many times. But the other day, I actually went in, and you want to guess how many times you've been on? Because I counted it up. 9.
9?
Yeah.
Oh.
So Andrew's been on 9 times. We're going to have a little, I wanted to kind of have both of them on so we get unique perspectives in this show. Usually the format is pretty straightforward where we interview one-on-one. But we had both these guys on to kind of give us unique perspectives from the reviewer and the designer, and then also, you know, to think about how yourself you view audio. So we're going to have like 3 perspectives, really. Your perspective, you're here, the reviewer's perspective, and the designer's perspective on a couple of different topics. But one of the other things we love to do on the show is we like to do a little educational bit. Steve, your first question, if you are ready.
I am ready.
When we are thinking about listening for hi-fi, what is the most critical piece of information or a tool that you have learned over the years? So thinking back over your long experience.
Yes.
Not that long, but long.
Very long. I think actually the most important tool that any of you can have is, and it takes time, is time. Experience of listening to a lot of audio. Because your job really is, your assignment is to develop taste as to what you want your system to sound like. Not necessarily the most accurate or neutral or tube or solid state or digital. No, that's not the point. The point is that you have to figure out what works for you. It's like learning about wine. You can't just drink a bottle of wine and say you know anything about wine. You have to have a lot of different wine experiences to know where you're going. And I think that is crucial to developing a taste and know what you want. Because as my friend Herb Reichert once said, he says a lot of really interesting things. He says, you can't find what you're not looking for. So if you read a review and says, oh, this one is this and this and this, you go, oh, it must be really good. It might be really good, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So the whole point of all of this, the most important thing you can do is to listen to as much audio at shows, at friends, at dealers, and of course, best of all, is live with it. If you're new to this game and you've never had a turntable, not just because I love the sound of analog, but you should have that experience so that you know the difference between what analog sounds like and what digital sounds like. If you've only listened to digital and never heard analog, you're not complete, to put it mildly. So
that's interesting what Herb said. I can twist that. At my age, I can't even find what I am looking for.
Andrew, you have a new speaker coming out under Jones and Soretta. Do you have the model? I didn't catch the model. I just know the new brand.
We call it the Troubadour.
The Troubadour.
Or Troubadour, not the Troubadour. There is a the Troubadour, and it's in West Hollywood. But yeah, just down the street from me.
So you're known for concentric drivers, but there's a spin on it this time, right? You're using a field coil design. Field coil designs aren't brand new. It's not new tech, but it is kind of a feature set that appears on some of the really high-end speakers. I wonder if you could help myself and the audience to kind of better understand what makes a field coil speaker and how it's different from a traditional speaker.
How long have we got? But
5 minutes exactly.
Not only is it not a new technology, it's quite an old technology, it's the original technology for building loudspeakers. Back in the 20s and 30s, we didn't have good permanent magnets. We only got those when we got Alnico. And so all the early drivers were field coils. So basically an electromagnet. You put a current through a coil, and so you have to continually energize it to develop the magnetic field. Whereas when we got permanent magnets, you energize it once when you magnetize it, and then it remains, hopefully, permanently magnetized for the rest of its life. And there is a continued interest still in field coils all the time. And certain markets, that's what they want, but they're done in typically one of two particular ways. A full-range driver, so a very lightweight paper cone, small diameter voice coil, and maybe a whizzer cone on. So the magnet is, the field magnet is quite small, and the power requirement's not too excessive. Or they're used in compression drivers, and I didn't want to do either of that. As you say, I develop, whenever I can, I do the concentric drivers. And working with the guys that I partnered with to do this new company, and I will say it's a new company, it's not a MoFi company, but I still work for MoFi. And kind of on day release, they're interested in me developing ideas that they don't want within their own portfolio, but they're happy to give me the opportunity, which is fantastic, to go out with this partnership and do something new. And so we had all interested in high-efficiency speakers. My first speaker that I developed when I moved out here nearly 32 years ago was a high-efficiency speaker, the Infinity Prelude. It was 96 dB, but with assisted bass to get that, powered bass. So we thought, well, these guys especially love high efficiency, like Altec 604s, which are also a kind of concentric driver, and tube amps and whatever. So why don't we try something based on that? And so thought that was interesting, but I have to work things out in my mind to decide, so what can I contribute to that? What can I do to make it even more interesting? And I thought, okay, field coils. Why don't we experiment with field coils? But if it's a concentric driver, how do I do that? And I quickly realized that just one field coil wasn't going to be the optimum way of getting the flux in the gaps. So I thought, what if I could wind concentric field coils? A tweeter field coil inside of a mid-range field coil, each driving its own gap. And I thought, that's worthwhile investigating. And so I started doing all the finite element analysis to magnetic circuit study to see if it was practical. And it's semi-practical till you pick it up. Try picking it up.
I can't pick that thing up.
You're young and strong. Pick it up. Come on.
I mean, I'll finish this part quickly. But
Yeah.
as you're trying, you need more than one hand. As you're trying to develop the magnet circuit, you quickly realize that in order to minimize how much power you need to put in to power that coil, the more mass of copper you've got, the more efficient the electromagnet becomes. So I'm doing all these studies and I'm making it bigger and bigger and deeper and deeper. And then one day I'm just thinking, what's this going to weigh? And it's like a solid mass of steel and copper. And I thought, well, copper density is about the same as steel within 10%, and you take in the winding inefficiency, so the same. I'll just, in my mind, calculate it based on a slug of copper, 6-inch diameter, 6-inch deep. That's going to be about 35 pounds, and it is. So that's why I brought it there. It's like the sword and the stone. Can you lift
35 pounds. Steve.
Wait, can I cross-examine the witness?
Yeah, cross-examine the witness. Yes, I think.
Yes?
The table's yours, Steve. Go ahead.
The part that I'm waiting to hear
Is the speaker.
No. Well, that, of course. But what does it get you? What is the advantage of using a field coil?
Good point. So one of the things that people talk about, the difference between the field coil magnetic circuit and a permanent magnet, is that the way a driver works is you're supposed to have a fixed flux from the permanent magnet or the electromagnet. And then the varying flux from the coil gives you the driving reaction force. So one is fixed, the other is the variable. Therefore, the force is entirely dependent on the variable field. So it's a linear system.
Okay.
If that fixed field starts to vary, then you get modulation between the varying field and the fixed field. That's distortion. That's modulation distortion. A lot of the permanent magnet structures, until recently, always had that very problem. And nearly if you take apart 99% of speakers, it's a 6mm top plate thickness with a ferrite or neomagnet with the gap. It's all and then a 12mm coil. It's so common. And that has flux modulation. So you get people these days like Purify or Bellissima coming up with convoluted structures of magnets with magnetization directions up and down and across to try and minimize that flux modulation. Field coils don't have that. So you've got that advantage straight off. And
what does that sound like when you reduce the flux modulation? Sorry.
Cleaner, more dynamic. More
dynamic.
hear-through. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
So more
next
linear
witness.
response, less distortion. Yeah?
What?
More linear response,
Yes.
less distortion potentially
Yes.
in the design.
Yes.
And that sounds cleaner.
Sounds cleaner. Yes.
I want to focus, not just the flux, but I want to focus the idea of you do all this work, and in the end, not just what it does technically, but how it sounds better.
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
And I only found that out 4 days ago. I got to listen to it for about half a day before I had to ship it out here. That's how close I came. I was getting very worried.
Okay. Oh, man. This would be a different conversation.
Okay.
Seemed like a good idea.
It seemed like a good idea. Yeah.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. One of the other things we do on the show is we talk stories sometimes. We have guests on. Steve has a new book coming out, The Blind Projectionist. Steve, when you were thinking about writing this book, was there any story that you can kind of share from us around that time period? I'm springing this on you, so I know I'll give you a second if you need to think. But, you know, the book, I'm assuming it contains some type of stories. Is there one from the book that you could share with us now that was, like, kind of fun or interesting or anecdotal?
Well, I want to pick a story that's short, so I'm trying to make it shorter.
So, it hasn't really been the trend here, but go ahead.
Why start now? So, by the way, the title, The Blind Projectionist, is me. It's a memoir, and I'm legally blind. And that meant in every theater that I worked in for 25 years, I was trying to hide this, that I couldn't actually see the screen. In any theater I worked in, I had this little pocket telescope so I could focus the movie, but I never could actually see the screen. So it was hard to pull off for all sorts of reasons. But anyway, the most stressful thing that ever happened to me was that Steven Spielberg rented my theater, which was the Baronet Coronet on 3rd Avenue and 59th Street, directly across from Bloomingdale's. He liked the theater. He used to come all the time. He rented the theater to do a premiere screening of Schindler's List. And it was a really big deal and massively stressful for the blind projectionist. Even if I had 20/20 vision, it would have been massively stressful. And it was on 2 screens, 1,000 tickets between the 2 screens, and $1,000 a ticket. So it was $1 million show for me to show. So a little tense, no pressure. And so what happens is that the day of the screening, I get there early because there's usually things that happen during the day before the actual screening, and I'm greeted in the lobby by a man with a row of film cans, and he says to me, "This print is Steven Spielberg's personal property. This print is an original, struck from the original negative. It's the only one in the world." Not too stressful at all. And he then informs me that though I'm the projectionist, I'm not allowed to touch that print. Only he can touch that print. And I said, good for you, because, but I'm accelerating the story. The movie starts, Steven Spielberg's it's 8 o'clock, Spielberg's in the audience, the cast of the movie's there, all the A-list celebrities in New York City are there in my theater. Start the show, my heart is pounding, it's very, very scary. People from the movie studio are in the room with me, the projection room, staring at me like, how you can't screw this up. Start the movie, and then 15 minutes in or so into the movie, the film breaks. It's off the screen, and I turned to the guy, the only one that could touch the movie. I said, "Can I touch it now?" And he said, "No." Meanwhile, the movie company brass, DreamWorks, are screaming at me, "Fix it." So I said, "Oh, do your thing there." And he does, and then I restart the show, and he misthreaded the machine. And I said to him over the next 3 hours, you have to tell Steven, as soon as this is off the screen and you go down and he says to you what the bleep happened, you're going to tell him that it was your fault. And if you don't man up, or whatever is the politically correct word, if you don't admit that it was your screw up, I will lose my job. 100%. So I'm counting on you. So for 3 hours, we had this conversation about that. So there's a dramatic part of the book. So many more stories.
But you just gave me a great idea.
Oh, good.
If you want to come and see my demonstration, I charge $1,000 a ticket to get into the room.
Do I get a discount as a reviewer?
Yeah, I'll give you a discount, yeah.
Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by Audiovision San Francisco, located in the heart of the city by the bay on 1628 California Street. Audiovision is a brick-and-mortar retail location that has been delivering some of the best sounds and hi-fi to Northern California for over 26 years. Come celebrate with Audiovision on May 16th and 17th at their huge in-store listening and learning event, with 4 full demo rooms with gear from brands like Yamaha, Revival Audio, Moonbite Sim Audio, Dino Audio, Nordost, Silent Angel, 2 new Technics turntables, and much more. The 2-day event is free to attend, and you can find more details on their store site, audiovisionsf.com. Tired of audio reviews that sound like they were written by robots? Us too. For the last 15 years, Part-Time Audiophile has been an open revolt against boring. And this year, we're doubling down. We have a brand new look and a brand new name, but the same old attitude. Find us at pt.audio for all your turntable throwdowns and amplifier face-offs. Great sound meets good times at pt.audio.
Andrew, do you have any stories from your long history in the hobby that you'd like to share? It's like one that sticks out in your
They're
mind.
all on video somewhere, 'cause I never stop talking about them. Oh, God, that's put me on the spot. The good stories.
I'm thinking of them for you, actually.
Do you have a story?
No, I'm trying to help you.
Oh.
I just want to tell you, I think we did a video years ago at CNET where you explained the varying impedance of a speaker.
Yeah.
And I think that was so good because so many people think that an 8-ohm speaker is 8 ohms and maybe it drops down a little bit, but it really looks more like this. So it's 8 ohms only a tiny bit of the time.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's just go to the technical for a minute because you brought that up. The thing about specifications and measuring, an amplifier is a lot easier to measure in a way than a speaker.
Right,
because
right.
an input and an output, and it's not influenced by the environment mostly that you're testing in. Whereas a speaker is hugely dependent. So trying to get accurate specs and consistent across how everyone decides this is my method of measuring, it's very difficult. And when you're trying to put together specs, and then someone says, well, mine is this level, you go, yeah, not really, not if you measure it in a consistent way. And it's, do I play any games, or do I just publish what the standard is? Because we have an international standard for measuring speakers called IEC, well, the original IEC 268-5. And when I was at KEF, Laurie Fincham was one of the committee members, and I worked with him on this to decide what is the best standardized way of measuring both impedance and sensitivity, because we never measure, we talk about efficiency of speakers. We never, ever, ever measure the efficiency of a speaker because we don't measure power out of a speaker typically. We measure sound pressure. We don't measure power in, we measure voltage. And so the ratio of pressure to voltage is the transfer function that gives you the sensitivity level. And as Steve says, the impedance varies widely. And not just in magnitude, but also in phase. So if you try and calculate the power at any frequency that's going into the speaker, it's going to be doing that. What's your reference level if you're going to measure efficiency? And then the power output of the speaker is the sum of the sound pressure in a complete 360-degree 4-pi environment. We don't typically measure that either. It's got easier with things like clip-hole, if you can afford them. I can't. But it doesn't do anything you can't do otherwise. It just does it more easily and costly. So we defined a set of standards in which you can measure speaker. Now, if you then choose to do it a different way, like just sticking a microphone in a room and doing a third octave average, you'll get a very different answer for what you say is the sensitivity of the speaker. And then if you ignore what the impedance curve does as well, you'll get a different answer yet again. And so it's like the old cowboy days of output power of amplifiers, where you see amplifiers 3,000 watts, or boom boxes with 3,000 watts of power. Yeah, no, it never did have that. So that's one of the biggest challenges I often face.
We brought up a subject that I've actually never heard of before, measurements. It's crazy. I'd love to debate that, but I don't think that's been done before either. Okay, so anyways, enough of the jokes. I read a review, or I heard about a review recently where the guy sat down and he measured a system, and it didn't measure very well, and he listened to it, and it sounded great. And his statement about that experience was that he felt like the speakers were lying to him, okay? This is about the relationship that people have with their listening and the relationship, and we all have a different relationship with how we perceive measurements to be a helpful tool in that process. Steve, I like to get your kind of impression on that, your reaction to that statement, and kind of how you, it's been said before, but I think it's worth, like what your attitude towards it is as a reviewer, from your reviewer perspective.
Can you take a break and go away? Can you take a break and walk away for a few minutes? I don't have a great relationship with measurements. First of all, I can't measure anything, but hostility.
Even if you could measure, you can't see the curves.
All right. Now,
Easy, guys, easy.
now I'm really going to give it to you. Now I'm pissed off. So you may want to just leave right now, so to avoid further shame. But anyway, it all started in 1982. You know what that year of 1982 was? The year that the CD came out, right? That was the beginning of digital audio, right? And I, like many audiophiles, thought that I was really looking forward to it because all of the problems of analog audio, of listening to turntable or tape, right, were very, very obvious. Non-flat frequency response, poor stereo separation, wow and flutter, intergroove distortion, the list goes on. Very, very obvious to everyone involved, right? But digital was going to be, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic now, perfect. It had flat frequency response, much wider stereo separation, no wow and flutter. So all of these very obvious and clear improvements should have made music sound more realistic. Pianos would sound more like pianos, drums more like drums, voices more like voices. And I listened to CDs and none of that happened. It did not sound any bit more realistic. That's why it proved, I didn't realize I was proving it to myself at the time, that improving measurements does not lead to more better sound. It doesn't work that way. There's other things going on that obviously are not being measured. And those are the things that we need to improve. So I'm not saying that a turntable that has more wow and flutter than another sounds better. I'm just saying that improving these things to an absolute, quantum leap better leads to better sound quality. It, at least by this example, which I think is a pretty tight example, proves my point. Your turn.
Okay, hold on. I don't really want to have debate here, but no, you want to respond?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a response. It's a support.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. We're friends. It may not look like it, but we are.
Well, we're going to team together, so he can't see the graphs. I can't hear very well, so we'll just form a partnership.
Together, you're either the most perceptive person or not perceptive at all.
So, what do we know of measurements that inform us how it sounds? We have to listen as we measure and see if there's a correlation. So measurements don't exist as a method of judging what you're doing without knowing how they influence what the sound is. Right. So anything we're doing should be based on a series of listening tests. And it can be, as a designer, it's a lot quicker for me to get to a certain stage of development from measurements, because I built up a lifetime, nearly literally, of both listening to systems and measuring systems. And I think often we might fall into a trap of the measurements are too rudimentary. They're quick to make, but they're easy to make wrong, and they only form a very small set of everything we need to know in order to know what the speaker is doing. So, and this is something that Floyd Toole talks about often, this idea of, well, we don't know what it should measure like until we know how do we evaluate that relationship between the curve and the sound. We've got to listen to it. What are we listening to? What is our reference sound? Every recording is done differently. Even if you were at the recording session, the only reference you have is what it sounded like on those monitors in that environment. And if you think that's the sole thing that they use to determine the mix, no. I was talking to Rick Rubin and touring a studio, and I asked him about the monitors he was using. He says, we evaluated more than a dozen different monitors to find the one we wanted, and we didn't choose it for the reasons you might think as a hi-fi guy. We did mixes. We took 2 or 3 tracks, and we remixed them over each set of monitors. And then we took those mixes, and we played them back on the headphones, on earphones, in the car, in the home, and found which mix gave the most kind of communication to the music, hearing what the music was trying to say to you. And because Rick is a great hi-fi enthusiast, he's always got different speakers and listening to them. But he listens for different things. We all are looking for different things when we listen to music, and we have a different set of references as to what we think is a good recording. But we don't know how that recording was made. And okay, you say, so I'm going to make my own recordings of an event I was at. Which microphones? What microphone technique? They don't capture the actual sound. They capture a minute part of it. And then you're going to play it back on a system that cannot recreate the sound field that existed, that you heard with your ears. So we've got that uncertainty. And so if you take that uncertainty in how to evaluate with any particular piece of music, and you add to it your particular tastes, it becomes a minefield. So in the end, like with Steve's experience, knowing what he's looking for, my experience of knowing what I'm trying to achieve, guided by my measurements, and if it's not sounding right, first thing I'll do is go back to the measurements and see, is there something obvious in there that I missed in my excitement of, oh, it works. But then, and it's my motto that I keep telling people, that if you like what I like, I have a business. If you don't, I have a hobby, right? And yes, I feel I'm a specialist in measuring, but I still have to listen to it. I've still got, which recording's this time to check that I like it.
So this is a bit of a tricky question for you, but maybe it lands on the technical side a little more. Is there a measurement that you wish existed that helps what's missing from measurements in your opinion? Like, it's, I always feel like I got all these graphs, but we don't have a full grasp on the human hearing. Is there some tiny little minute thing you're like, I just wish I could measure this part of hearing that would unlock the secret of, now measurements align with hearing perfectly?
Let me answer first because it'll be very short. I want to measure beauty. More beauty is good, less beauty is not as good. Back to you.
That's interesting because what I was going to say is I want to measure the brain. And I want to measure what lights up the pleasure centers in the brain, right? Because ultimately that's what you're looking for when you buy something.
Well, that's beauty.
And that's beauty. And I was actually talking to some people involved in some neuroscience where they've started to play music to people, and as they're listening, they've been able to scan certain sections of the brain to see what's happening. If that's the tool for the future that I want, you just can't do it in an MRI because you can't put your speakers in an MRI.
Let's see here.
That's your next challenge.
That's my next challenge.
Because that banging sound really is painful.
Well, there actually are different subject, but yeah.
This kind of goes back to measurements and how we think about measurements and listening. The question is like pretty simple, but maybe a complex answer for you is like, how much ultimately in the review process and in the design process do you trust your ears? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I don't trust it.
No, of course not. Why
I trust Steve's ears.
That's a really tricky question. I've never thought of that one before. How do I trust? Well, I just do because I've been doing this a really long time.
Experience.
And it's nice when people come up to me, which happens a lot, luckily, that they bought something based on my words and say, Steve, you nailed it. So I've had that happen enough to say I can trust my own judgment that when I like something, other people will like it. So that's as good as I get.
Yeah. Does the response of the audience that comes up to you in any way craft the way you kind of think about the way you listen in terms of what's correct or maybe not right?
Not exactly, but I just want to tell you that the last time I was here at AXPONA, I had lots of praise heaped upon me and a lot of people taking selfies with me and people telling me they love me and everything. It was like, oh man, this is amazing. So the show's over. I'm going out to the lot with my friend Michael Trey to get in the car. And a guy comes up to me and says, Guttenberg, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're terrible. I bought that thing and it totally sucks. You got to find another line of work. And I'm like laughing my head off. He said, what are you laughing at? I said, everyone just told me how much they love me. And now, just as I'm about to leave, you hate my guts. It was awesome.
It's both. I get that, and it also reminds me of a story that I was at a show. The room's quiet for once, and
you weren't talking.
I wasn't talking. Yes, this guy walks in. He says, "Can I talk to you about speaker designs?" Sure. So for about 10 minutes, he's telling me why all ways that I use to design speakers are wrong, that everything I'm doing is the wrong way.
Maybe it was the same guy.
and he's telling me how it should be done. And you can just tell he's looking for a fight at the end, a response. So at the end, I said, thank you. And he looks at me, what do you mean, thank you? I said, thank you for feeling that I'm so approachable that you can spend 10 minutes telling me why I'm totally wrong. I said, clearly, we both know we have different ways of designing or what we want from a design. And I can clearly say, I'm not going to change your mind. But I've been successful doing it the way I do. I'm always wanting to learn, obviously, but I'm not going to fundamentally change what I'm doing. So, but I just want to say thank you that, you felt you could approach me with that. And it just took the wind out of your sails and couldn't go on. But it's the point of, like Steve said, your experience. To some degree, you've got to trust you know what you're doing. Because if you try and guess what someone else might want, you'll guess wrong. Or there'll be so many contrary opinions. It's fun to see people writing nice things about you in comments, but then you'll see all the alternative comments, he doesn't know what he's doing, etc. You just have to ignore that noise, and through experience, trust yourself. I always, especially with this, always towards the end of the project, is it going to work this time? Are people going to like it? Is it better than what I did last time? And that uncertainty can kill you. And my wife, at one point, who was a psychotherapist,
Handy for you.
Every engineer needs a psychotherapist as a wife. She said, look, put on your Sheldon hat, analyze. Have you had this problem every single time you've done a new speaker? I said, yes. Okay, statistically, have they been successful? And I'm going to say yes, right? She says, okay, so if they always have worked, the probability is it will work again this time. And so I kind of, okay, trust your judgment, trust you got the experience to know what you're doing, and work from that.
I just want to add something. I'm fascinated by this stage of the evolution of the art of audio and speaker design, that there is no convergence in what great sound is.
Right.
You know, MBL's going their way. Everybody's got their own way. And there's nothing moving towards this is the one sound because this is the perfect sound. If anything, they're more and more divergent, they're not converging. And even sometimes within a speaker company, they're going in different directions. So, no, it's just wide open. So anyway, you got a tough job, man.
You guys both have amazing careers in hi-fi. You've done a lot of different things, a lot of successful things, at least in my eyes.
So far.
I wanted to get...
Only got to keep it up for a few more years.
That's true. You're counting down. So are you Johnny Carson with questions now?
No, we got a couple. I don't know if we'll be able to get to them. We're running out of time, but I do want to get this last question of mine in real quick. Okay. So we'll start with you, Andrew. What you have a question?
No. Okay.
No. Your name's Steve. He's Andrew. All right. So the question I have for you is: you've done a lot of things, a lot of great things. What do you want your legacy to be? Like when you look back, what do you want to be like known for ultimately?
I think I've never thought about legacy. That sounds pompous. It kind of, oh, look what I've done on my deathbed, kind of. I simply think I've been very fortunate to spend nearly my entire life, from interest in hi-fi pre-teens to being 70, and always being able to do something I love and luckily be successful at it, so I can both earn a living from it but thoroughly enjoy it. So my legacy is more that I was fortunate to be able to do this, have mentors that guided me to be able to achieve what I've done. I'd say it's that way.
Wait, I'm going to add for you, the thing that you did is you kept moving it forward. You just didn't do the same thing over and over again. You kept pushing your abilities.
Yeah, I want a challenge. I want to be able to solve challenges.
Yeah. Steve?
Maybe this isn't the answer that you would expect or would be the obvious answer. I think of myself as an entertainer. And that I'm trying to make audio fun. I want you to be expanding your horizons. I want to entertain. Certainly in my videos, it's easier to do in a video than it is in print. But that's what I want to do. I want to have people watch me because I make them laugh, because it's funny, because they say, oh, I never thought of that before. That's what I'm doing. It's not the conclusion of the review that's the most important to me. The important thing is have I taken you from where you started when you watched my video to the end, and you're smiling. That's it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, awesome, guys. And
wait, you're not applauding that?
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
How about a round of applause for both these guys coming on the show?
I thought I went somewhere.
I want to thank you guys both for coming on the show and also your contributions to the hobby. I think it's been a really great ride. So thank you everybody for attending and all the clapping, and yeah, check out the show, The Occasional Podcast.
Wait. What? Tomorrow, come back to this room at 1 o'clock and see the Steve Show.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's not going to be there. But
And if you want to see Andrew, what's your room? Andrew's new speaker.
302.
302.
302.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes PartTimeAudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA Newsletter, and Audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE Studio monitors. AI songs produced by Udio.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Get any finer? The designer and the reviewer. The music plays right though, yeah. Here's the Audiophiliac YouTube channel. He's got opinions on sound. His name is Steve Guttenberg. What was missing is now found, and the designer is here. He used to work at Guttenberg and Andrew Jones. Steve Guttenberg and Andrew Jones. Steve Guttenberg and Andrew Jones.